So recently we've been looking at ways to analyze data, such as mean, median, mode, and range. And today we're going to look at line plots. A line plot is a graph that shows the frequency of data occurring along a number line. They provide a quick and easy way to organize data and are best used when comparing fewer than 25 numbers. First, we're going to look at how to make a line plot, and then we're going to look at how to analyze the data in the line plot. The first step is to gather your data. For example, let's say that 10 students in the 3rd grade were asked the following question: how many books did you read over the summer? Your data is the amount of books that were read by each student. It doesn't matter which student read how many books. So let's say here is a frequency table of that data. The second step is to organize the data in numerical order. So here we listed them from least to greatest. The third step is to create your number line. So you're going to want to look and see which is your largest and which is your smallest data. In our example, the smallest is 0 and the largest is 8. So we're going to use numbers that span from 0 to 8. You won't always have to label every single number. It just depends what your range of numbers are. For here, from 0 to 8, we can go ahead and label each number on the number line. The next step is to mark an X above the horizontal line every time that data occurs. Make sure you stack them on top of each other and that you do it in a very organized way so that they, take up the same amount of space, each X, so that you can look at it and see which number had the most frequency for it. So now that we successfully made our number line, we can look at it and interpret the data that we see. So let's first look at clusters. Clusters are groups of data. Make sure you record that on your handout. Here we can see in purple there's a cluster between reading 1 book and 2 books. That means that there were a lot of books that were read that fall within those 2 categories. Next we can look and see if there are any gaps. Gaps are areas without any data. Here we can see that there's gaps between 3 books and 5 books and between 5 books and 8 books. You can see that in orange up here. We can also look at our line plot and see if there are any outliers. An outlier is any data which is much different from most of the other data. Here we could say the outlier is 8 because it is far away from the others, and it breaks that pattern of the most common amount of books read by students. We should also be able to just glance at our line plot and see if there are any modes. Modes are the ones that show up the most often. In this case, it's 2 books, since 2 books occurs more frequently than any other set of data. And line plots are a really useful way for finding the mode because you can easily glance at it and see the tallest stack of X's. We can also quickly find the range. Range is the difference between the largest data and the smallest data. So 8 is our largest and 0 is the smallest. Oops, this should be 8 minus 0, which is 8. Median is the middle of all of our data. So what we do is we cross off from the ends until we find the middle one. So I'm crossing one from each side. Now I'm going to start here and cross off a second one from each end, a third one from each end, and fourth one from each end. And that leaves 2 that fall in the middle. And since they are the same number, it is a median of 2. Let's do this line plot together on your handout. We have a list of test scores. I have included these steps to making a line plot on your handout so you can follow along. The first thing is to put all of your data in numerical order. That means in order by numbers. Here we went from least to greatest. Next we have to decide how we're going to make the number line. So you want to find the smallest data, which is called a lowest extreme, and the greatest data, which is the upper extreme. Since our numbers range from 80 all the way to 98, we want to include those on there. So I chose to go by an interval of 2's. And now you simply plot each data with an X, taking care to make your X's all the same size and stack them neatly on top of each other. And now that we have our line plot made, we can look at it and interpret the data. So our range is the difference between the largest and the smallest. 98 subtract 80 is 18. Let's look and see if there are any clusters. Here I drew a purple box around those that I feel are clustered together. So I would say there's a cluster from 88 to 90 and a cluster from 95 to 98. How about gaps? In orange I showed the gaps. There seems to be a gap from 80 to 88 and a gap between 92 to 94. An outlier is a number that's much different than the other in the data. 80 appears to be the outlier. And the mode is the one that shows up the most. This really is obvious on a line plot because you can just see that your stack of the greatest number of x's is at 96. And now to find the median. The median is the data that falls in the middle. Remember, median sounds a little like medium, which is right in the middle between small and large. So we cross off 1 from each end, 2 from each end, 3 from each end, 4 from each end, 5 from each end. So we have two numbers that fall in the middle, and we need to find the mean of them, or the average of them. We have 95, and a 96. Now you could go ahead and add those two and then divide by 2, because you're finding the middle of them. So add and divide by 2. Or just look at it and think, now what would fall right in the middle of 95 and 96? It would be 95.5 or 95.5.